We will start the last presentation at our Cyber Tech and Risk Trusted Cloud virtual conference. So this session is pretty much like a wrap up what we talk about today. Join this session, we have Issa Senior Director, Cloud and Transformation from Royal Bank of Canada, RBC. Issa Zhuang has an exceptional career with over 20 years in cybersecurity, digital transformation, and cloud security. He joined RBC to build a world-class cloud security practice. And with the customer-first mindset, his team focused on risk management, governance, and compliance to ensure secure enablement of cloud for RBC lines of business and partners. Let me start my question first, then we go from there. So this is, we call it a fireside chat. So I like to learn a little bit more about, from Issa's point of view, what is a cloud, what is trusted cloud mean to you? All right, so with that, the first question really is the topic of our conference. So what does this trusted cloud mean to you, Issa?
Well, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. And thanks, Bryan, for giving me the opportunity to close this exceptional conference. So, if what we've heard today, like we heard lots of presentations, and basically they all mean something to get into this to the trusted cloud. So, as the conference alludes to, it's not just about scalability, efficiency, cost savings, but really it's about privacy, compliance, resiliency, which actually leads to trust, right? So what is a trusted cloud? A trusted cloud is a cloud that can be reached through a maturity level. So if you look at the NIST, for example, or the CMM, cloud maturity models, a trusted cloud is something that, you know, somewhere between, on a scale to 0 to 5, is somewhere between 3 and 3.5, and with a lot of emphasis on the security parts.
All right, so Issa, you mentioned a very important, the maturity level. So how can we move up? Of course, we don't want to move down. How can we move up to manage or even optimize like a level for the cloud?
Excellent question. So the maturity model defines, like, you know, 5 different levels where you can move from initial, acknowledged, defined, managed, and optimal. And basically, if you look at all the frameworks that we've heard today, you know, they will allow you to get up through that maturity level. So for example, the first thing that we need to do well is, you know, a trusted cloud needs to be well architected and well designed. And this means, like, you know, you don't design through the traditional ways, because now you're operating in a zero trust environment. Like, you know, if you were on the Microsoft session today, operating in a zero trust environment is completely different than when you operate in a traditional environment. You know, we're used to the concept of security, trust, but verify. When you operate in a zero trust, is like never trust and always verify. So it's a complete paradigm shift from an architecture perspective. You know, you don't allow connections from the internet into your corporate environment. You only allow connections from your corporate environment to specific destinations outside. So next one is really, it needs to be well secured. Security is you need like lots of frameworks to secure your cloud. You need to do security reviews. You need to build your detective preventative controls throughout, like, your life cycle and then the pipeline. You need to make sure that you have good operational readiness. You need to make sure that you have risk assessments that allow you to basically have security controls and make sure the results of those assessments are low and not medium and high. And then you can whatever organization you have, like whether it's a cloud council or what is operational readiness, that like the go no go decision basically to go to cloud. This is an executive decision, and it needs to be supported by executive management. And if you're mature enough and have low risks, then they will allow those applications to get to cloud.
All right.
And the last item I'd like to touch upon is really, the well-governed. So you have like all these processes and frameworks. You really need to make sure that you have some light governance that allow you to be nimble, but at the same time, it needs to be seamless and it needs to be consistent. So this way, like, if an application comes to cloud and another one, they have to go through a series of gates in a way that will allow you to get to cloud. And the governance has to be like light. I call it light governance, or you heard the word also frictionless today. So it needs to be frictionless, otherwise you're not empowering your business to get to cloud.
Very cool. All right, so that's basically come up to the kind of what's your view about the trusted cloud, about the maturity, using classic maturity level to review the cloud implementation. And my next question regarding cloud is, you have heard a lot of topics today, right? So in the conference, when we have a session, we have topics like governance, GRC, governance, risk compliance. We have identity and access management, data protection, operation, multi-cloud. So there are so many areas about the cloud. So my question for you, Issa, from your point of view, how can we put all those great components or domains together to build your cloud strategy or program?
It's actually a good question. You need to weave all these frameworks together to get to a trusted cloud. So I know like a lot of people don't like this word, but really cloud is a journey and it's not like a destination, We've seen all these presentations pertaining to cloud frameworks, and this journey will take you to a trusted cloud. Of course, you need a lot of buy-in. When the decision to go to cloud needs to be a business decision, corporate decision. It needs to be, you cannot go to public cloud if you don't have, buy-in from executive management. So it needs to be an executive management decision. And you cannot work public cloud from the grounds up. It needs to be like a top-down decision. And a lot of corporations are getting to cloud, and when they define cloud, most of them will define cloud first strategy. And if you listen to most of the analysts, they'll tell you that within 2025, if you don't have a cloud first strategy, like chances are your competitiveness is going to drop. So you are correct. There's a lot of frameworks that you need to take into consideration to build like a cloud program. You need like identity and access, the data protection frameworks, the security reviews, the risk assessments, the operational readiness, the continuous monitoring, the light governance, which is the umbrella that overarches the compliance capabilities. And also you need to look at things that will help you continue, like the continuous monitoring. So for example, Gartner came up with this concept of CSPM about 2 years ago, and it basically affirms that 80% of the cloud breaches are related to configuration issues. So basically they're saying 80% of the breaches are related to misconfiguration. So you need to think about like continuous monitoring, preventative detective controls, and posture monitoring to make sure like, that you don't have a drift in the configuration. Oftentimes, when you launch an application, you basically have everything you need. It's secured. It's in the cloud. But what happens 2 weeks after? You need to make sure that you have that continuous monitoring and you monitor that drift and be able to ensure at all times that the posture is maintained and it has not changed.
Perfect. So if I can use an analogy for that, just like you got a very powerful car, so you need to first of all know how to drive it, right? So that's a basic how to configure it, like all the devices you need to know. So some button, something if you don't know, you just random touch that will break things. And then another part you mentioned really is you need to maintain it, right? So it's not like just I bought it, that's it. You have to regularly maintain, upgrade all those things. And you also need to follow the rules, right? So all those governance rules.
There's one more item that, a lot of corporations ignore, which is basically, when you go into a public cloud, the support model is different. It's a shared model. And I encourage, everyone to do to simulate like a breach, to be able to work, to know who to call, what, like the interaction, everything needs to be scripted. Otherwise, when you have like a minor mishap happening, everybody's going to struggle. Okay, so how do I start? So you have to have like an incident management, and it's completely different than the enterprise space. You need to know to work it with your CSPs or cloud service providers.
Very cool. Yeah, so those are the things. So a little, actually quite different from your classic enterprise or on-premise environment. Cloud brings a lot of changes, and things can be done very fast, very powerful, but also if you have done it not right, it will cause the significant damage.
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. So since we are on the cloud, so from your point of view, when company like they maybe already start the cloud journey, or maybe just considering that. So what kind of major challenges can you think about for companies when they transform their business to cloud?
That's actually another good question, Bryan. The biggest challenge that, in my experience, is really the culture, the paradigm shift. You have to relearn, especially if you've been working in the enterprise space for like 10, 15 years. It's very difficult, or it's an uphill battle to get into clouds. And the first thing that we have a tendency to do is like extend our tooling and know-how and processes from the enterprise into cloud. But I mean, if you've done this a couple of times, you know that this is like a short-term band-aid solution, and it's not going to scale. And you have to start thinking differently. You have to look at native services, different tools. You need expertise, and you need like a blend of expertise. If you don't have people that did it, and I think Matthew touched upon the talent this morning, you need a good blend of senior people that have done it before, and you need to train your existing teams to be able to get to that level. And it's a long journey, because oftentimes you have to retrain your brain muscles to think differently, and but it can be done, and those who have done it are actually more successful in cloud. Like you see companies that created like a new team, and then then the existing team was supporting the enterprise space, and then the new team was supporting the cloud, and then there was no interaction between the two teams, and there's a clash. So basically, you will cause like what they call in this space like a productivity pit, and there are ways to control it, right? So some companies will train their employees and their middle management directors on what to expect. And unfortunately, not everybody does it, but we're fortunate here, like to be able to get that training and what to expect in the different scenarios and how to tackle these challenges.
Very cool. So what I hear from a couple of, if I can summarize, so one is related to the change management, because the cloud is still relatively new, which means, especially for large organization, you have a lot of transition, the change. So there will be a lot of pain during this journey. Any change management, as we know, people may not feel very comfortable with that. And another one you emphasize is the culture, right? So it's a paradigm shift. So the way you're looking at existing IT or infrastructure service, security auditor is different on the cloud. So how do you adapt to that one? And Correct. The third one you mentioned really very important is about the training, awareness. So not the people working on cloud, but also everybody, right? So because including the business leaders, they need to have that mentality about the cloud.
Correct. So, Pradeep touched upon, like on the panel, how to break those barriers. Like, when you work in cloud, it's not, everybody is, like your team is horizontal. You have a cross-functional team that is working on everything. So basically you broke down the silos from security, operations, identity and access. Everybody's working in a horizontally in a cross-functional team as one single team. Like, they don't think like, oh, I'm security, I'm engineering, I'm a platform, I'm a product owner, etc. It's one team. And this is the beauty of, if you want to succeed, you really have to work as a cross-functional team. Otherwise, traditional, like it's like the traditional space where security comes at the end. Nothing is baked. So everything we do as a cross-functional team is like it's like when you're cooking, you have all the ingredients and you're baking a little bit of everything into the end product. So basically the end product has everything baked in, so you have the security, the engineering, the architecture, as opposed to like bolted on,
Yeah, so in essence, the world become more complex, right? So
yeah.
It's not just, one thing, that's it. So like I from the developer background, so it's not like I can do some coding, then I can master everything. So you need to know a bit about security, DevOps, you need to know compliance, you need to know all this cloud and infrastructure. So yeah, so it becomes more and more kind of a blended skills you need to have.
It does.
At the end of the day, really to solve the challenge, right? So the project and the challenge. All right, so Issa, you observed so many kind of changes, projects, and technology-wise about the cloud. So in your opinion, what is the current industry trend about cloud? Or in other words, where are we going in the next maybe 103 years? So where are we going with the cloud technology?
So if I have to look at when you try to project in the future, you always have to look back and where you came from, right? So like 15 years ago, like it was the start of cloud, and none of the financials or the big corporations had any presence. It started really about 10 years ago, and in the last 10 years, everybody was expecting cloud to reach the same maturity as everything else on which we were working like for 50 years, right? So there is this acceleration in services in building security as a service. And if you look at the figures that were published by the analysts such as Gartner and Forrester, the cloud spend is now at $300 billion, and it will be at in excess of 800 in 2025. And as I mentioned earlier, if you don't have a cloud first strategy, chances are you're going to be left behind. So you need to either get on the bandwagon otherwise you'll be left behind. I mean, left behind. I don't mean like, your competitive advantage won't be as good as the others, right? So if you look at AWS, for example, and Azure, they had like a couple of dozen services about 10 years ago. And if you look today, they have over 250 services. Those are like the major services, and over 600 sub services. So you see the acceleration of the services that they provide. Unfortunately, over the last 10 years, the service providers were more focused on functionality and efficiencies than really on security. So what we'll see is there will be a lot more focus on the security services. So when they add these services, they provision that, okay, they need to be secured. And if you look today, for example, half these services don't have forensics capabilities. Like so if you have like a fraud or an investigation that you need to do, you realize that you have to provision yourself, like as a company, to be able to do that investigation. So like only half the services from the service providers have those capabilities today. So I'm predicting that, like the newer services or the ones that will be refreshed will have those capabilities built in. And you see like things like capabilities to scan for sensitive information. And we're seeing that more and more often. So you see that the service providers are building those services. They also are banking on machine language and AI to enhance those services. So we're seeing already like maybe 10% of those services that already use machine language and AI for decisions. And we're using them. Back maybe 10 years ago, like when you used your credit card, like the only AI that was used, or not even, was really the geolocation. So if you used your credit card in Mexico and then you used it in Toronto, if the time was like less than 6 hours, like there would be a flag that would block the transactions. Well, today there's over 70 algorithms for machine language, and to say, okay, this is what is my assurance that this is Bryan, right? Is it 70%? Is it 80%? And as we perfect those machine language, the AI can make the decision. We can say, okay, if the assurance is over 90%, then allow the transaction. And this is when you do an authorization. So this shows you how, like even the interaction with fraud is ahead of the game. And these are like seconds. Like you're using your credit card and you're authorizing, and then within a fraction of a second, like you get that assurance. Is it allowed or blocked? So this is the kind of thing that's happening. In the European Union, they're a little bit ahead. They're working with the service provider. They have a program called Digital Sovereignty. And this is really, they're working with the local governments on privacy, so that the data owners are the only ones that should have access to that private data. So in Canada and the US or North America, like the Cloud Security Alliance actually created a group called Trusted Cloud Initiative, right? So basically to do the same thing, which is really to help cloud service provider come up with industry best practices and recommendations.
All right. So what I hear from you, there are actually, I think of 3 or 4 major things. One is the cloud is changing so fast. There are so many like services from the providers, which is very true, because we did some like a cloud experiential learning with it, even during that training session, right? So we found, oh, there are certain things already changed because a vendor already upgrade or added new services. So that's number one. And then number two, you mentioned is while things are moving fast, the security still need to catch up. Right, so a lot of services, they still need more security. For example, like a container and all those Kubernetes, all those are newer serverlessness. So how do you handle all those security concerns? And the other one I just try to summarize is automation, right? So because you have so many areas to looking at, and you need to leverage machine learning automation to look into those things and automate the business process. And the last one you mentioned also the privacy, right? So that's also from regulation that's become more and more important and gets more and more attention.
Correct.
Very cool. All right, so it's getting closer to our session. And before we go, actually two more questions for you. Okay. One is, so if you, I know you are leading the team of very like excellent engineer, compliance, all those. So to build a successful cloud team, what kind of skills and capabilities we're looking for? So if we try to hire a good cloud security professional or cloud professional, what kind of skills we are looking for?
Cloud is a multidisciplinary practice. We need technical folks. We need promoters. We need product line managers. We need product line owners. We need scrum masters, engineers. So it's not a city, but it's a multidisciplinary, right? So you need people who have expertise in identity and access. You absolutely need a little bit of everything, and you need senior, intermediate, and junior. So if you're starting, as Matthew mentioned this morning, you need that senior expertise. And then as you basically gain grounds, you need intermediate, and you start hiring, and then you bringing the junior into intermediate, and then become senior, right? So as you build the practice, actually, you get that expertise, and you need also to invest into the existing employees. So you need a nice blend of new and existing to build those practice. But above all, you need a good understanding of cloud native. We look also at the eagerness to innovate. You need to be passionate. And you need to be a disruptor. We hear like you need to be a catalyst and change, but like in reality, what we need people to be able to to challenge status quo. Oftentimes when you sit like for a couple of years into an area environment, you think that you've done everything you could, but like when you bring like new folks, whether they're junior, intermediate, or senior, you need that fresh eye to basically remind you, like to disrupt that status quo. Like say like, okay, you know what, I personally don't think, or professionally I think we need to bring those enhancements, and this is why, right? So we need to challenge status quo.
Right. So we already call it the cloud spirit, right?
we need to be willing to try new things, right?
Right. Cool. Of course, the company culture also is very important. You need to give the space for people to develop that skills. All right, so it's coming to the end of our session. So first of all, thank you very much, Issa John. So we learned a lot from your insights. And before we leave, I'd like to ask you one last question. If we can only name one, what is your top recommendation to our audience before we wrap up regarding the cloud or trusted cloud?
Actually, I'm thinking about it a lot, but if I had to say one, actually, I think you need to invest in your people. A lot of these CEOs, they mention something like your people are your only sustainable competitive advantage. And this is so true, because, if you invest in your people, like everything becomes easy after. Like you need to train them, and you need to to be able to keep them. You need to reduce that. The word is not coming to me, but basically the attrition rate, right? You need to make sure that the attrition rate is actually very low. And I've been successful in the past. In my experience, to be able to bring in like good resources, train good resources, and keep them happy. I think this is really your only sustainable competitive advantage. I mean, the technology you can always train people. However, you need a good blend of expertise and investment into your team.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, still the talent is really important, yes. And you need to have a kind of a well-educated and well-prepared team to handle this. Is a powerful tool, right? This is our last session. We wrap up our Trusted Cloud Virtual Conference. So again, thank you for all the support for our speakers and our participants, our sponsors, our friends. So I hope you get some value from there, and keep in touch. And for people like Issa, John, they are the expert. They are also like a role model in the industry. So connect with them and learn from them.